Although the appearance of Steve Carell's Michael Scott changed radically after season 1 of The Office, this transformation was more than skin deep. While the original UK sitcom The Office was a beloved cult hit, the cynical British sitcom had a hard time travelling overseas. Later British sitcoms like The IT Crowd and The Inbetweeners were disastrous failures when transplanted to the US, but the US take on The Office was critically acclaimed, adored by fans, and lasted a staggering 9 seasons. However, The Office's journey from a hit British sitcom to a successful US comedy show was a tough, complicated one. The first season of The Office is infamously hard to watch, leaning far too hard into mean-spirited cringe comedy and lacking both the heart and the cartoony humor that made later seasons so memorable. At first, the US take on The Office strived to be as faithful to the original show as possible, and the result was a downbeat, dour show where failure was the order of the day. Why Steve Carell's Michael looked different after The Office Season 1. Michael Scott was no longer made to resemble David Brent after Season 1. Steve Carell as Michael Scott in The Office custom image by Milica Georgievic. In The Office Season 1, the main characters seem to authentically resent each other, and the eventual shift in their personalities is particularly evident in the characterization of Steve Carell's Michael Scott. Carell Scott changes his appearance almost completely after The Office Season 1, no longer working in shirts but instead wearing a full business suit. Despite his hapless persona, his haircut and clothing are sharper, providing a comical contrast with his buffoonish antics. It is a lot funnier to see Carell's bumbling goofball spout nonsense and pratfall while dressed for success than it was to see him as an unkempt, stressed-looking middle manager. Vitally, this change also lined up with a big switch in the personality of The Office's Michael Scott. Originally, Michael was clearly based on the original UK show's main character, David Brent. Like so many iconic characters from British sitcoms, Brent was an abrasive, often outright irritating presence. Viewers were encouraged to root for the boorish Brent's downfall and, in an extensive oral history celebrating The Office's 20th anniversary, showrunner Jeg Daniels admitted that this was also the original point of Carell's character. Daniels told The Hollywood Reporter that, in Season 1, he was not a good person. As the sitcom continued, Daniels said the writers began nudging him from a person who is not part of your group, and you don't really like them, to a person who you're frustrated with often, but is part of your group. He's more of the frustrating uncle or something. Steve Carell's new look illustrated a bigger Michael Scott change. Moving away from Rick Gervais' UK Office character made Michael better. With Michael's new appearance in Season 2 came a broader change in the character. Michael Scott was no longer just a copy of David Brent, but an original character from Season 2 onward, with a much more likable personality and sympathetic portrayal. He remained hilariously frustrating and delusional right until Steve Carell's exit from The Office, but Michael was now an essentially decent, kind character whose ignorance, small-mindedness, and desperation to impress were his flaws, not his defining traits. Gervais Brent remains almost impressively insufferable throughout the UK version of The Office, and most of the show's sweetest moments come from other characters. In contrast, Carell's character is arguably the sweetest cast member of The Office despite his glaringly obvious issues. Carell Scott became an endearing figure of fun who, although he almost always made the wrong decision or said the wrong thing, usually had the right motives and wanted the best for everyone. Changing Michael's character was key for The Office US to find its identity. Michael Scott's character shift was echoed throughout The Office US. Changing Michael proved surprisingly pivotal to the future success of The Office, as the show only hit its stride after Michael's character shift happened. The worst episodes of The Office were too cartoony for their own good, but many classic outings benefited from a goofy, silly tone that is largely absent in the grounded first season. As The Office's Michael became more amiable, the show's tone lost the edge of its British counterpart and settled into something sweeter and sillier. Michael never stopped getting into major scrapes and causing chaos for the rest of the show's heroes, but it became easier to root for Michael Scott the longer The Office went on. His character flaws were smoothed out and, while he was still constantly coming out with cringeworthy comments, everyone knew he meant well. Meanwhile, Michael's surprising talent with sales proved he did have some unexpected depths, and his kindness toward his co-workers and his eventual love interest, Holly Flax, alike showed that The Office's antihero was far from the odious character introduced in Season 1.